The most unreal thing that you can say to another person of color right now is the question to yourself that if we were able to help the masses of people of color that are suffering all over this country right now, considering the mere fact that we've made some very uncomfortable choices and decisions due to our historic existence, in this journey through 400 years of slavery as people of color. Um, I heard a wise man once tell me something that I couldn't handle when he said, the worst thing we could have done to people and people of color, random, just masses in general, is to emancipate them too quickly without educating them. Someone said it was like the miseducation of the Negro or uh, the manipulation or what sorts. But being a Washingtonian, I see this in three phases of that enlightenment because I realize that there's a thing called the emancipation of all Washingtonians, which was so uniquely rare that it didn't really honestly just pertain to just people of color, but it talked about the whole enslavement and in debt um, existence, and from a a productive and meaningful respect. Uh, the majority of the people who lived in the District of Columbia during the era prior to the emancipation were not just random people just standing around shucking and jiving and waiting for somebody to rape and pillage or something like that. These were craftsmen and people that were connected to other folks. I mean, from the existence of the District of Columbia and its creation, almost 30% of what exists as such doesn't even belong to the country. And each one of these people, each one of these entities outside of the country also, um, you know, uh, kind of employ or exist around people that also possess other residencies around and with them, and their kids go to school with the American kids and this, that, and the other. So, only in the history of this country did the emancipation of Washingtonians become the most unique thing, and yet the biggest example of why the federal government could not afford to do that to too many more people anywhere else, because outside of their own, uh, then came the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, we weren't, in the social media era, so it didn't matter how much, you know, uh, the rest of the country, was all on notice. You know, those horses and buggies and whatnot that delivered, the emails weren't quite thorough, through a lot of things. So realizing that the Emancipation Proclamation should have been the end of all, only for us to have this other alternative celebration called Juneteenth, where upon finding out that Texas was like, I don't know what you said, man, later for y'all. We good down here. Uh, they marched some people all the way down there, and by the time that they made it down there and got up on their Capitol and read, look, y'all, I'm serious. Y'all's free. They were still finding people in that area that didn't know that they were emancipated in the 70s, early 80s, literally, and the southern regions and whatnot. So, three levels of the reality of freedom, and the mere fact that, okay, if you free a bunch of people that used to have a use, that now have no other alternative but to decide not to use whatever, what kind of mentality would I establish? All right, now let's fast forward back to my great and powerful, most honorable Andy Young, and what he caught hell for saying to the Atlanta University complex of colleges of historical black, pomp and circumstance. He sat back when they said, we up in our feelings because you given, the bottom feeder of our social classism of education, the brunt of what we wouldn't mind having over here too. And he sat back and he says, look, man, he said, if you take the Atlanta University, college university spectrum, every little college, including the Bible College and a couple other little things that sit right there in that area, and you combine them all together into one black, historically black university complex, they would have been the largest educational complex in the country, and by far one of the most diverse in the world. And yet and still, none of that was great enough for them to save Morris Brown or to save the mere fact that right now we still are suffering from so many things that we can't help the masses because we're not massive enough to handle the inclusion of everyone when we were conditioned to only look out for the Divine Nine or the Talented 10 or the NAACP or Prince Halls or whatever we needed in our social class. If she wasn't a debutante, where are your parents from? What country are you from? This, that, and the other. As people of color right now today, every last one of us requires something that most of us cannot handle understanding. That the only way that we exist, the only way that we actually mean something to somebody else, the only way that black lives matter are when we are more capable of making more things productive in our existence. It matters because we matter. We make our communities better. We do good business. We are greater people. We teach and learn and lift up. We are a village. We can be a community and not just a couple of folks over there because they're good frat brothers or this, that, and the other, but every last one of them, including the hillbillies and the rednecks and the white trash that we're stuck with and around too. Therein lies half of the problem that we got, because what we see in racism is really honestly pain from a lot of these poor, pale people who are now starting to realize that the next 200 years are the last 200 years of their existence, and they can't even figure out where they came from. So we, as who we are, need to get up off of our asses and take what's ours and stop acting like somebody kept us from some other place that can't doggone free themselves en masse as we are right now, just because we got lucky enough. Now, maybe segregation wasn't a good thing. Maybe freeing everybody wasn't a good thing. Not because it wasn't a good thing, but because you can't just send people out to let them do whatever they want when they have no idea why. What should I do? I should just shuck and jive? We got more people of non-color doing that are complaining about us messing up the whole game. And therein lies our opioid problem. So right now, right here, we have to start deciding to ourselves, what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? Because there is no black race. There is no this, that, and the other. There's lots of peoples of color all over the doggone place who can only tolerate a certain amount of whatever they're conditioned through culture to at least, work with or not. But that's what's got us right where we are. Now, it's a whole new game. What are you going to do? Barbecue or mildew? I mean, I'm all up in this, and I'm trying to do something, not because I'm talking a good game, but because I'm not going to sit on my ass and let people look at me as, oh, what a shame. What are you going to do?